Balls Deep.
Hello and welcome to episode 11 of Balls Deep.
Hello, welcome.
We are back in the UK and loving life. We've had an exciting few months of travels, but we are currently in the UK again, visiting family and friends, catching up with everybody, which we'll do a whole episode all about those kinds of things. But today we have some exciting things to talk about. And we're going to start with an exciting fact that I've been dying to tell Scott about for weeks, I would say. Would you say it's weeks?
Yeah, you have been absolutely dying. And I've always said, hold it for the podcast. But I'm guessing you've told someone already because I know you were like freaking out. Okay.
Yeah, it's a fact that I learned through TikTok that I've been dying to tell Scott, and I'm actually recording his reaction as we speak. Because Scott, we visited a lot of museums recently.
We sure have.
And an area of interest for both of us is ancient Egypt, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So my fact pertains to ancient Egypt, and many ancient Egyptians were mummified, as I'm sure you're aware.
Yeah, we saw one in India.
We did. That was pretty. We saw a mummy's hand, didn't we?
Yeah, it was quite fun. I've seen mummified bodies before, but yeah, it never gets less creepy.
Well, yeah, and I think just that one mummified hand on its own was like a new layer of, oh my god, that's gross.
Yeah, it was pretty, but it's amazing how well kept it is. Like, it really does. They maintain really well.
They do. So they're very well preserved, and that's, probably to do with the whole process of mummification. And I know that they used to put, this isn't the fact, this is just a side fact, of they used to bury, in the tombs they used to put honey with mummies, and that honey would still be edible today because honey doesn't have a best before date, like it doesn't expire. It's self-preserving, which I think is a pretty cool fact. But more to the point of what I've been dying to tell you for a number of weeks now.
Okay, the fact. Shelby's big fact is coming.
It is. So, many people were mummified. However, we have seen a mummy in a museum, but there aren't many of them. There's not like loads of mummies.
I don't know. I've seen a few. In Chicago, in the Prehistoric Museum in Chicago, there's quite a few.
Okay. Well, compared to the amount of people that will have been mummified and sort of exhumed, I guess, I feel like my setup is pretty poor. But what I'm basically trying to get at is, do you know the reason why there aren't as many mummies as one might think, given that basically all of ancient Egyptians were mummified? Or maybe not all of them, but do you know what I mean?
No, I do not know.
Victorians ate them. Comments, Scott. Questions?
Ate them?
Yeah. So Victorians believed that whatever it was that preserved mummies was like life-giving, and that it would cure them of ailments and diseases. So
Cure them?
Yeah, and so it'd be like, it's like a supplement. They would Victorians would eat mummies to try and cure and prevent disease.
Oh, it's making me feel quite sick. That's wow. Wait, who decided that was good vitamins?
I'm gonna go with Victoria, but I don't know.
Victoria Beckham.
No, Queen Victoria of the Victorian era.
Okay, Queen Victoria. What the fuck? They ate, as in what? They just. I wonder how that would come to be, though. They just found one, went, oh, this is, this looks like a well-nutritional body. Like, why mummified bodies? That's crazy.
I've no idea, but what's even more concerning? So you know how, like, we were saying that I've been dying to tell you this fact since I learnt it, and I was like, and you said save it for the podcast because I wanted to see your reaction to this, and so I told my mum, because you're like, just tell someone else, don't tell me, and her reaction was, oh, I bet it was like blue cheese.
Oh right, she actually tried to compare it to something. What a funny reaction. I really like blue cheese, so I might have gotten on board if it was like blue cheese.
Well, there you go. Maybe you'd like mummy.
Well, I like blue cheese and I have a bunch of vitamins all the time. I'm always health conscious, so we look back at it and we say that's fucked up, but if everyone around you's doing it and saying this is a new thing, you'd probably do it. But it's very easy to say we wouldn't, but you probably would. But that is mega fucked up with what we know now. That's wow. What the fuck?
So so that's my fact. Scott, do you have a fact?
I do, yes. Yeah, you can just do another one. Sorry, we're doing shorts on the episode today, so.
And I might point out that I was already doing the thing that Scott thought I wasn't doing, so I stopped one video and started a new video. If that's what you meant.
Oh, I thought you were still doing the same video.
No, I'm not.
I thought you were. So she had the phone up, yeah.
He thinks I'm a noob.
I do no. It's our first time, so I didn't know. I was concerned. Okay, anyway. Yes, I do have a fun fact. It's. I think after what we've just heard, it's going to be probably pretty grim. So, to be honest, I'd start the video again.
Okay, starting.
I told you. I said to Shelby at the start. I said the hardest thing about shooting the shorts is it's going to be shooting it at the right time to just get that 1 minute, 2 minute. And Shelby said that'll be the easiest thing out of all of it. And I said, no, that'll be the hardest. So Shelby said, I'll deal with it. And now we have like a 5-minute video.
So I'm going to start a new video.
We'll start again. And you can just, we won't cut this out of the podcast because you're part of the journey with us. But what was your question, Shelby?
So that's my fact, Scott. Do you have a fact?
Yes, I do. It's quite a bizarre one. And it's really cool because you can fact check it right now. So you don't have to go away, search online. Where you're sat, where you're stood right this moment, you can fact check it. And it'll take 2 seconds. Whatever you look at in the room you're in right now, it doesn't matter what you look at. If you look at it and think about what it would feel like if you were to lick it, you would know exactly how it feels without licking it.
Wow. So I'm not.
It's.
Oh my god, that's so weird. Sorry, that's so weird. I'm just looking around the room. So my thought process then, why I went quiet, was I looked at a towel, I looked at a fan, I looked at a box, looked at my wardrobe door, and I was like, yeah, I know exactly what that would feel like to lick that.
It's bizarre, isn't it? So if you're watching this video now, just look at anything in the room you're in and just think, if I was to lick it, what it would feel like, and you'll feel the feeling of what it'll feel like on your tongue without even doing it. So that's my fun fact.
It's a great fact.
It is. So it's a pretty cool one. So it's a pretty cool.
So I have a follow-up question. How did you learn this fact, Scott?
I actually think it was on a radio about 4 or 5 years ago. I didn't really listen to radio, but I briefly remember it was on a radio station that I learned it. Yeah, it was just they said it on radio, and because you can fact check it instantly, I instantly knew it was true. So yeah, and if you don't, it's maybe go freak your friends out with it. Especially if if they like to, get high. Tell them when they're high. it'll well freak them out. Yeah, so there's some pretty cool facts, but it's not as interesting. I guess they're interesting for different ways, but yours is the most mind-blowing, I think.
Well, so I am still in awe of my own fact, because when I saw it it was like a stitch on TikTok where this one guy was like, what's a fact that you know that no one will believe is a real fact, or something along those lines. And then this girl pipes up with, the reason that there aren't as many mummies as we might think is because the Victorians ate them. And I googled it and it's true, so you can google it. But then your fact, it's just bizarre. So I'm looking at my Minnie Mouse suitcase in the corner, which actually may have been slightly visible in the shot, and it wasn't supposed to be. But it's like, it's textured. It's like waterproof material, and then it's got Minnie Mouse kind of stitched onto it, like sort of a little bit 3D. And I can imagine that feeling of, you know, going around the outside edge of it. That's so bizarre. That's really... I wonder if there's like other things like... I don't know, you can hear how they sound if you tap them, or I don't know. I feel like maybe not. I think that the lick thing is... It's very unique. So thank you for sharing that, Scott.
I mean, you might be right. There might be more. I don't know how we figured that out. So, because I hadn't figured that out until I got told it. So, but it's always been there, and it'll take... So it's... I wouldn't be surprised if there's more that... Something more, you know, with our senses that we don't even realise.
Well, there's so many things like, you know, the dress, like that whole phenomenon about the dress that was a particular colour. Yeah,
that still confuses me today how that works.
Yeah, it's something to do with the contrast, because I always it is a black and blue dress. That's, you know, I'm not just saying that to be confrontational. That has been factually proven. It's a black and blue dress. But if you were to change the contrast of the the picture, you know, like put the contrast way up so that it was really bright, then it does look white and gold, and then I can see it in that sense. But then when you put the picture, it is actually black and blue. So it's something to do with how your eyes perceive that. And do you remember that Yanni and Laurel, the sound one? Did you ever hear that? It was like Laurel, or like Yanni, like it's like a high pitched Yanni. Or a low-pitched Laurel.
No, I don't know if I remember that one.
Okay, I'll find it. I'll show you in a bit. But I actually saw it. It was either... it won't be a TikTok, because I don't go on TikTok too often, but it will have been like a Facebook shot or something. Or it may have been a TikTok on Facebook. TikTok. She just shake her TikToks at me. TikTok. And it was 2 words. It was like something like either brainstorm or brain fog, and then I don't remember what the other word is. But whichever word you looked at when you listened to it, that's what you could hear. If you know what I mean. So it was like this one. So it might have gone brain fog, and you're looking at the word brain fog. But there's 2 words side by side on the screen. And let's say the other one was, I don't know, carpenter. I don't remember what it was. If you move your eyes on the screen to where it says carpenter, you'd hear carpenter. The sound hasn't changed in any way. It's just your brain's perception of it. So there's like so many things like that, like the untapped areas of our brain that we don't, you know, they say we only use 20% of our brain. I think that's probably true.
Well, I'll give you another fact. That's not true, sadly. Oh. Yeah, the brain thing actually has been debuffed. Is that the word? What was it? So debunked. Maybe. Debunked. Yeah, it's actually been debunked. We do use our whole brain. Yeah. So
well, consciously though. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, for sure, your brain's doing stuff in the background, but you know, like people that wake up from comas and they can suddenly speak another language. They must have heard all of that somewhere at some point.
Well, they believe that. Again, I do know about the brain thing. I do know that the 20%. I believe that for a long time, but I do know that that's no more true. It is that we use pretty much the whole of our brain. But the coma thing, my understanding is that they have, you know, like us doing Spanish classes in school. You know, we did years and years of Spanish classes, but I can barely, you know, I remember hello, thank you, a couple things. But people come out of comas and they remember it all. So that's my understanding, is that they have consumed it somewhere. They just haven't consciously kept on to it. So that's my understanding. I don't believe someone can just suddenly speak French and never consume French at all. I don't think that's possible.
No, that's kind of my point, though. So it's that they've got this locked in their brain somewhere, but they don't have access to it. They're not using that part of their brain that's got that memory. So that's what I mean by like not using the brain. So they have learned it, and I agree. I don't think that someone can, having never been exposed to French knowingly or unknowingly, or Spanish or whatever language, I don't think that someone can suddenly speak a different language from the coma, having never been exposed to it, but they have, probably like you say in school, or whether it's just through like just random bits in films that your mind hasn't been conscious of. So it's that, the subconscious mind that we that we haven't really tapped into. That's what I mean by the like not using all of our brain. Like we're not consciously daily using everything. Like and there's probably loads of other things. Like, and I have this, like, this is totally random, but I have this really strong fear that I'm going to forget how to fall to sleep. When I really think about it, I don't think based on your reaction, I've obviously never told you this information.
No.
Sometimes when I'm laying in bed, and particularly when I'm not tired, but I know I need to go to sleep, I'm thinking about the process of sleep. I'm like, right, well, I know I shut my eyes. What's step 2? Well, step 2 is you fall asleep, but how do I get to that? How do I get from A to B? Like, how do I go from conscious to unconscious? And the more I think about that, the more I worry. My brain's going to go, oh, yeah, this isn't logical. We're not going to do it anymore. So that's a bit of a weird, well, maybe an overshare, but that's a weird fear that I have. Totally off topic, but yeah.
Now you've explained that, though, I do understand the logic of how you've got there. Yeah, I do get how you've got there.
It's like when you're walking, if you suddenly think right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot, and then you're like, how do I do this without thinking about it normally? Like, do people actually do that? Like, do you ever, when you're walking, do you ever think, like, you're suddenly aware of which leg is going? Like, most of the time, you're not aware, you're walking from A to B. But then, all of a sudden, sometimes I become really aware. Oh, I'm deciding to put this foot forward now. Oh, no, I'm putting that foot forward now. And then when I start thinking right, left, I'm like, Jesus, how do I go about my day without thinking about this? I just do it. Without thinking about it. But I'm thinking about it, and I can think of nothing else.
Yeah, I guess because it's just so constant, it just becomes second nature. But I think what maybe people ignore is, I do wonder, that the things that we just do every day that we don't think about, but it still takes effort. Making the bed, having a shower, making breakfast, they still take concentration, they still take effort, and they still take energy. So I think it's very easy for us to look at days and be like, oh, we haven't really got a right lot done today. And, you're never going to look back on a day and feel like I've had a successful day today, if you've just, lived a day, made your bed, had all your meals and had a shower. But I think it would be interesting to find out how much energy that does take away from your battery each day. Because, like what you said, when you become conscious of it and go left, right, you can feel yourself thinking about it. Like, your brain is always doing that. I would have thought it's a very small percentage of effort in your brain because it's done it for so long, but it's still something. So I think, maybe that piece of it, maybe we sort of, we don't take it into consideration as serious enough with the level of energy it's taken off us each day, especially when we start our days not of any energy at all anyways. But anyway.
Well, that was a nice little side conversation. I think it's quite an interesting one. But we should get on to the point of today, which is to discuss in more detail our experience in India. So India was an interesting place. Like, we spoke a little bit about our experience there and how it's kind of chaotic and just unique. Like, it's like nowhere else that we've been before. So if you're looking for a unique experience, then that'd be a reason to go.
Yeah, and there's a caveat on that. It's unique, but it's taxing. So as long as you're comfortable with uncomfortable, then go for it. But if you like your comforts, you're not gonna have a nice time, I don't feel. Maybe that's a little harsh to say, but it depends on the type of traveller you are. That is definitely something you need to take into consideration.
Yeah, definitely. And also, like, the different places that there are in India as well. Like, Like I think we mentioned last time about Delhi was much more comfortable than Mumbai, and then no doubt there'll be countless other places that we've been told about that are stunning and peaceful, but certainly our experience of India is that it mostly was chaotic. I think that's probably the main word I would use to summarize it. We had some really nice experiences, and we connected with some of Scott's friends and colleagues, and that was wonderful. So we did have a really good time there in that sense. But in terms of comfort compared to other places that we travelled this year, India was definitely bottom of the list for comfort. So one of the reasons, an interesting reason why I found it most uncomfortable, Scott, was the fact that, and I don't want this to sound totally ignorant, but out of everywhere we've been, we were, it was the least touristy place, I would say. And that surprised me, actually, that there weren't as many tourists, but often we were the only tourists for the entire day. Like, you just wouldn't see other tourists. And as a result of that, people would, they'd stare, and they'd, like, not just stare, but, like, gawp. And that's something that I found personally quite uncomfortable. How did you feel about it?
Yeah, and Shelby's not underselling the tourists. We saw tourists 2 times in our travels there. At one monument in Delhi, where an entire coach turned up with a tour group. Even at the Taj Mahal, we didn't see any tourists. It was totally all locals, and there was a lot of people there. The other place was the airport. It was bizarre. So it was, we really were the minority in that sense. And it was, I knew I'm used to getting stares in, when you tend to go to places, especially with like poverty, you get a lot of stares. So I knew that was going to happen, but it not to the extent, because like you said, they gawped. And that was quite uncomfortable, because when someone just, fluts an eye at you, fine, or even just stares at you for a bit too long, whatever. But when they just, their jaw drops and they just stare at you until you leave their view, that's then quite very uncomfortable. And it pretty much everyone did it. And I can understand for you that would be more uncomfortable, because for me, I just sort of, I think being a guy, it's easier to feel less threatened. Whereas for you, I think there's a lot more fears there. So I can totally appreciate that would have been way more intense for you. So for me, it was just I could push it out for most of the time, but there were moments, especially when we went to like monuments, touristy things where you'd go see, like a fort or, something like the Qutub Minar in Delhi. It would get a bit overwhelming for me, because we would have crowds of people queuing up to take photos with us. But before we get into that, I'd like to hear more on what Shelby thinks on, as being a woman and experiencing that, and sort of relating it to, just the general fears. I know there's lots of scary facts out there. How did that really feel for you? And maybe with some advice to other women that if they were going to travel to India, especially if they're solo travelers.
Yeah, so I mean, the one particular thing that stands out in my mind is the night that I was meeting you and your colleagues for drinks and dinner, and I couldn't get a taxi in Mumbai. So you'll find this in, to be honest, I mean, we even found it in France. I feel like Uber and the like, I mean, not to diss Uber particularly, but rideshare apps, they just cancel left and right. Like you'd book one and it would cancel. You book one, it would be like 2 minutes away and then it would cancel. Like you'd be waiting 10 minutes, it would be almost like literally on top of you, and then it would just cancel. So I was trying so hard to get a taxi to meet Scott and his colleagues, and it just wasn't happening. And I thought, right, I'm gonna go and get a rickshaw from outside, like a tuk-tuk rickshaw. It's like a one person in the front. It's like tricycle, I guess, a motorized tricycle.
They're really fun. So if you go to India or Thailand, they're everywhere. You've got to get in one. Don't get scared of them. They're super fun.
Yeah, they are super fun and really cheap as well. So I thought, right, they're absolutely everywhere. I'm just going to go out. I'm going to walk down to the main street and just get one. So, like, I walked out to the first, like, out of the apartment complex that we were staying in. I did in fact, one pulled up right outside, dropping someone off. And I was trying to tell him that the bar that I was to meet you, and he didn't understand me at all. Even, like trying to use translate, I think just my accent, whatever. He just wasn't understanding me. But there were two local women who spoke English really well, and they helped me and they spoke to him on my behalf. And he was just like, "Oh no, I'm not. I'm not going in that direction. I don't want to do it." And so I thought, right, okay, I'm just gonna head to the road. So I went to the first road, asked 2 or 3 tuk-tuks, and they were like, "No." Like it was. I'm still not sure whether it was that they didn't understand me or they didn't want to go there. It was one of those two things.
I did find out when we got a rickshaw there, and we only had like a 5-minute drive from the office. We actually paid them double because apparently rickshaw drivers didn't, at that time of the day, rickshaw drivers don't like driving that way. So I did learn that apparently because of how busy it is. Apparently it's not. I mean, we saw this a couple of times that rickshaws were quite particular in sometimes what spots they drive to because it wasn't going to be financially good for them. So I think if they're waiting around in traffic a lot, then it ends up not being financially worth it. So I think that's why.
Yeah, I think it's something like, I don't know if they get paid per kilometre rather than time. So like it's, paid in distance rather than time. So if they're in traffic, then obviously, like you say, it's not financially feasible for them to do it. But so I, again, trying to get rickshaws didn't work. And I ended up walking down to the main road. And walking in India is not easy because the roads are just so uneven. I mean, Delhi's not too bad compared to Mumbai, but this was in Mumbai. But they're really like dusty, dirty roads. It's like up and down on the pavement, and like, like where a pavement will dip for a car to go up or whatever. It's like a near foot drop. It's not like we're used to anyway in the UK where it's quite low. So I was up and down. I was walking, trying to get a rickshaw, trying to get a taxi, still looking on rideshare apps, trying to get it. And I'm walking. It's quite late at night by this point. I think it was like 8 o'clock or something. 8 getting on for 9. And I was just walking past people, and they were all just like looking at me as if to say, "Who are you and what you're doing here and why you're walking about on your own?" Or at least that's my interpretation of it. Like, just shot people on the other side of the road looking over at me. I'm getting my phone out trying to look at it, and then I thought, right, I'll stand in this like well lit up sort of 7-Eleven doorway, that kind of shop, convenience store shop. But then people were staring at me there, and then I was trying to get the taxi, and it was just an uncomfortable experience because it's just a bit overwhelming. Like, we mentioned before about India being overwhelming, and in that situation, there's so many cars, but none of them will stop for me. Or like if they do, they're just like, I have no idea what you're saying. So yeah, it was just intimidating and overwhelming. And then I was thinking, well, shall I walk back to the apartment? But then I don't think I had a key to get in or whatever it was. I was just fully like done. Like I was done in by the night. But then finally, I got in one. I got on the phone to you, and you put Jonas on, who's a local Indian guy who's one of your friends from work, and he sorted it out for me. He spoke to the guy on the phone, told him where we were going, and yeah, it worked out in the end.
Yeah, it did. Luckily, we were having a nice dinner with all my colleagues, so they had the good local knowledge. And it was funny because the rickshaw driver still didn't know where the bar was, so he actually told them to come to a tobacco factory that was just that was about 3-4 minutes down. But so we were gonna meet you there, but somehow the rickshaw figured out eventually when he got there. So, but no, it was I can. It's an odd one, but at the end of the day, it gives you an insight into how how it is to feel like a minority. That's something that we've never experienced. The only other place I'd say I've been where I've been, the only tourist was Tanzania, and I didn't really feel it as much there. Only maybe in the capital, Dar es Salaam, I felt it a bit there, but not as much as India. I think just more the staring and intrigue in you made you feel it more. So yeah, it's given me a newfound, sort of respect, or appreciation is probably a better word for, people that, have grown up in the country, like the UK, even though I feel racism has massively decreased. I know there'll be people that say it's still awful, it's still terrible, but I really don't think it's as bad as it used to be. It's it's going to be about, but I do know that people still stare. I know that because I've got good friends and even a family, and they say, yeah, today if I still walk through, around a city, I still get stared at, and I like that. You think that wouldn't happen now, but I know it does. That I still get stared at. Like I was like, what? So if I had to live with that, it would grind me down. So yeah, I really given me really humbled me for that, and really made me realize how tough that could be on someone.
Absolutely. And like you say, it's like, thankfully we've been brought up with families and friends who are not racists, but like racism is still a big thing, and it's something that of course we can sit and say, oh, that must be awful for you, to someone who has experienced it, but we've never been able to experience it to any sort of degree whatsoever. On the receiving end of it is what I'm saying. Like we've never been able to say until going to India, we've never been able to say, oh yeah, I know what that must feel like. You can imagine, of course, like you can empathise, but it's like, and not at all, of course, to say that it's anything like on a par as what ethnic minorities face in their daily lives, but it was a unique insight into a small fraction of what that must feel like for someone to go through. And for us it was irritating, but for someone who's facing it on a daily basis, that's ridiculous and unbearable. And it was like, the other comparison that we drew it to was like, it was like being a celebrity, because like Scott said earlier, people would ask for our photograph, and at that Qutub Minar, like this one guy, he sat right next to us and like was trying to covertly take pictures with us. Like, how disrespectful. And then like even there's one guy came up to us, we were sat down on the grass, and he was like, oh, can I take a picture of you with my family? And you're like, oh no, sorry, like you were super respectful. And he went, please, like as if, like, what do you mean? Like, stop asking for a picture of me because of a white tourist. Like, what? Sometimes we would take, like, if we were like, I don't know, a couple of places we said, yeah, sure, why not? But like, a no should be a no at that point. It's never, okay to just go up to someone and demand things of them. So yeah, it also gave us a new understanding of celebrities. Like, when you hear about celebrities being total assholes, like, I saw him in a restaurant and they wouldn't let me take a picture. Yeah, like, too right. Like, they're having a meal. Like, we were just sat on the grass enjoying a nice view, and like, why are you asking for a picture? I don't know. Bit of a rant there.
Yeah, I can totally. I know for sure. If I had the level of celebrity as like like a Brad Pitt, I think every other week I'd be punching someone. Like, I just, which you only see like one clip of like a whole celebrity's fame usually punching someone. I think I'd be punching someone every week. Like, I just got so sick of it. Like, at first it was quite unique. I was like, oh, what the hell? I've not experienced this. Especially, in Indonesia. It was Indonesia and India were the two places where it happened the most. We'd still get asked in other countries, but a lot less frequently. But Indonesia and India, we got asked all the time. And it's funny at the start, but when you're there for a month and you get asked every day, you just say no. You just end up saying no to everyone. So yeah, it's an odd one to be ready for, isn't it? But I guess that's maybe a more of a comical sort of experience we've had with the minority piece. Yeah, it's a funny one. Have you got any other comments on it, or?
No, I don't think so.
Something else interesting is it again, it depends what the type of traveller you are. So, on where you would go in countries. So if you're someone who just wants to do it all and see all the weird and crazy, then, you're not going to be bothered for, you're going to become, okay with going to poverty-stricken places and maybe places that have less hygiene. Maybe, the logistics of places are not as good. So, of course, India, poverty is, it's really in your face. And, there's going to always be beggars in these places. There's going to be lots of beggars. You're going to have people knocking on your window whilst you're driving. They're just going to keep knocking on the window, just staring at you. When you go to, tourist attractions, are going to be, coming right at you, trying to sell you everything. And again, you can't get angry at it. They are poor. They need money. Like, they've got no other way of making money. Like, how can you be angry at it? Like, yes, you may find it irritating to have to fight through them, but what else do you expect them to do? Like, they don't have any other opportunity. They're, they've got to do something. They can't just, give up. So it is a tough one. But I know for me, I've experienced, I don't know if it's all, even more that I've experienced more than you. I think I can put it out of my mind a lot easier than you. Because for me, it's awful, and it's never not awful, because a lot of the time it can be kids. And sometimes these kids are 6 years old, super, super young, but I just, with those things, if it's constant, I just can, become numb to it. There are moments that will hit me, when you just see a moment when it's maybe just, maybe it's in the morning and there's just this 6-year-old kid with a ripped top and he's just trying to, he's picking up just bottle caps just to try and make money like that. There are moments where it still hit me. I'm like, fucking hell. But you end up just getting numb to it. Whereas I think because Shelby's the quality that I love most about Shelby is just she cares so much. And honestly, and I'm not just saying this to gaslight her, there's no one on this earth that deserves you. Because I do honestly, this is getting on to more personal, I do worry that I'm going to pollute you.
Stop it.
No, I'm serious, because the level of care that you have and love that you have for just everyone, every animal, everyone, even a fly, you have the same love for everyone, and you...
Except mosquitoes.
Except fuck mosquitoes. They can fuck off. Bring on Regini. Go Regini. Regini, if you've watched... If you're familiar, if you don't know who Regini is, he's a very famous Indian actor. And he's basically the Chuck Norris of India. And he does great films. It's the language is Tamil, and it's in, I think it's Northern Indian. It might even be called Tamil where he's from. No, the language is Tamil. But anyway, he's from a specific part of India. It's quite divisive. He's beloved in some areas of India, and he's hated in others. Yeah. We even found out that a marriage got broken up because someone didn't accept Regina into the relation. Because one was super passionate about him, and the other one was like, I don't like him, and apparently broke up a marriage. So that's how seriously they take Regina. But anyway, there's a scene. I just said Regina. There's a scene in one of his recent films. It's the robot film. I don't know the name of it, but if you just put Regina robot film, and he fights a bunch of mosquitoes. And he wins, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, yeah. So he sees this mosquito land on this girl he likes' cheek, and so then he chases the mosquito into a wall of mosquitoes, and he's like, "Which one of you bit her?" And then he grabs it and he's talking to it, and he's like, "You need to go and apologize." And he makes the mosquito apologize to her. It's great.
That's so great. So go watch a Regina film that we got to watch when we were in India. It was good fun. But yeah, I guess we see like. I mean, how did it make you feel? Because I know you had a specific interaction, and you know you did something quite interesting, and yeah, how was that experience? I mean, explain the experience and everything.
Okay, yeah. So we were out in Mumbai. We'd been to is it Gateway of India? Is that what it's called? The Gateway of India, which is cool, very cool to see. And we saw the Taj Mahal hotel, which has nothing to do with the Taj Mahal itself. But it's, well, I don't know if it has, but it doesn't look like it, and it's in Mumbai. But there was a terrorist attack there. Do you know what year it was? It was in our lifetime, wasn't it?
It wasn't too long. I remember it on the news.
In the last 10, 15 years, maybe.
Oh yeah, definitely in the last 10. It was like, if I had to guess, it'd be like 2017 to 19. It would be.
Oh wow! Sorry, yeah, I didn't realize it was that recently. But you can still see bullet holes in the building. So we saw that hotel, and then we were walking about. Were we in that area? Anyway, we were in Mumbai. We're in downtown Mumbai. Roughly.
We were at the Queen's Necklace.
Yes.
Queen's Pearl Necklace. So if you're familiar with that, it's not a rude thing. Again, if you've come here for that, then you're gonna be you're not gonna get what you've come here for. But no, it's basically it's the way the city lights up at the lake. And it looks, if you look at it from a high position, it looks like a necklace, and they call it the Queen's Pearl Necklace. So that's where we were, for context.
Thank you. So we were there, and we were walking around. We were trying to get dinner at a restaurant whose name escapes me, but it was a really nice Italian restaurant. And we had like a 45-minute wait. They just said, yeah, come back in 45. And a little girl was selling flowers, and did we end up buying a flower? I feel like we did end up buying a flower. Well, my memory's shit.
Do you want me to do it?
Yeah, can you tell the story, because I'm failing it.
Yeah, so we'd had a very long day. We'd had a good day. We'd gone into Mumbai downtown by ourselves, which whenever we told people that, they were like, this isn't a visual podcast, so you can't see my face, but just they were like concerned whenever we told people that, like, you went downtown by yourself. And we're like, yeah, like, why wouldn't we go? And like they were like really shocked, but it's fine, again, if you're a confident traveler, you're fine. It's totally safe. It is safe. We even got a local taxi, which we were already, usually we don't get local taxis in places we don't know, but we were told it's totally fine.
He did rip us off, but other than that, it's fine.
Yeah, he did rip us off. He on the way to the Queen's Pearl Necklace, just about 5 minutes before he dropped us off, what his trick was is he started telling us about buildings around us. He started saying, "Oh, this is this building," and he didn't do that all the way through the journey, just in the last 5 minutes. And then, we were looking at the meter like throughout the journey, so we knew what it was on. It was on like something like 200, and all of a sudden it was on like 220, and then we had like 2 minutes left. And all of a sudden, when we stopped, it jumped to like 350. And we're like, that's well dodged. So yeah. I think he just played with it when he was showing us around. But anyway, basically, we were there. I think the restaurant was called Pizza by the Sea or something. Yeah. And we had a really good meal in there, actually. One recommended by my manager. Yeah, we just before we went in there, again, we mentioned there's lots of beggars. Basically this little adorable girl came up to us. And she, had roses, and she was, just said, please give me money, as they do. And, Shelby got, stopped by her. I mean, I just carry on walking, You've kind of got to, you can't give money to everyone, So, it feels a bit ruthless at first, but you get used to it. But Shelby just crumbles every time. It's like if we see a dog, you crumble every time. Yeah. I'm just like, it's a dog.
Saying it's a dog is like saying, oh, look, it's the greatest thing that's ever walked on this earth to me. Those are synonymous, dog and best thing ever. So, like, you saying, oh, it's a dog, it's like me going, hello, it's a dog. So, yeah, that's just my comment on that.
Yeah, so you can see what I mean by what I said at the start. You know, the trait of Shelby that I love the most is that, you know, I mean, it's annoying that it stops us for every single dog, but, you know, she just loves everything to the end degree. And, you know, she had this cute kid in front of her who was begging, and, you know, maybe you take it from here, because this is where, are you able to take the reins now?
Yes. Yeah. So we were talking, and she was saying that she was trying to save money for school, which, I mean, I've later found out is not true, because primary education in India is free. But regardless, she's obviously poor. Whatever her tactic is, whatever reason for wanting to get money, she's not going home to a mansion. Do you know what I mean? She's going home to discomfort, going to whatever her home is. But we were talking, and she commented on my sunglasses, which, I mean, it's evening at this point. I don't know why I still had them on, but I got them like on my head, pushing back my hair. I said, "Oh, it's Mickey Mouse," and she said, "I know." And she said, "Can I have a look at them?" So I passed them to her, and she was looking at them, and, you know, she said that they were very nice, and she really liked them, and she gave them back to me. But then she asked me if she could have them, and I just couldn't say no to her. Like, there was no way I was saying no to it. And I had really mixed emotions about it, because my initial response was, well, I don't want to give them to her because I really like these sunglasses.
Which again, if you're hearing this out of context, you go, "Oh, that's selfish, or that's, you should have given her them." Mate, you have someone coming up to you every minute. You know, you can't just, you know, you wouldn't have any money left.
Like, literally taking the drink out, asking you for the drink out of your hand, like your bottle of Coke out your hand. We've had that.
Yeah, it's not as simple as that. You can't, you know, we can't save, you know, poverty of the world. You know, it's not going to happen from me and Shelby just giving everyone our, you know, what change we have in our pocket. So, you know, don't put those comments down there.
Yeah. So, but then I felt really guilty because of that response, because I thought, this child's got absolutely nothing. Like, I've been to Disneyland in Tokyo and got these glasses. Like, I am, by all accounts, in comparison, rich. You know, like, so I just, yeah. So I had that emotion of, like, initial response of, well, no, I don't want to give you my glasses because I like these glasses. Then intense guilt for thinking that, to then being like, this girl's probably never going to go to Disney, probably never going to own anything that's from Disney. And so I just thought, do you know what? Even if everything she said to me, you know, like, whatever reason for needing the money or wanting the glasses or whatever, I thought she's got more of a need for them than I have. Like, for me, they're a want, for her, and they're not necessarily a need. Like, she doesn't need Disney sunglasses, but maybe she's got no sunglasses at all. Probably she doesn't. Maybe they'll help her in that sense, or whatever. Anyway, so I just decided that I would give her the glasses. And it was, yeah, it was quite, anyway, because she walked with us for a while, you know, like, we're chatting to her. She told us her name was Shona. We then saw her later, and she gave me a flower, didn't she?
She also then asked us for 6,000 rupees.
Oh, I don't remember that.
Yeah, to put us through school.
Oh, right, yeah. And as we've established a few moments ago, school's free. So, yeah, you know, I mean, and her mother and younger sister were about as well, like, doing the same thing, selling flowers. And we saw her later, and she didn't have the glasses. And Scott was like, "Where are the glasses?" And she said that she'd give them to her little sister. So, I mean, I think in the most likely thing is they will have sold them. But regardless, like, I felt in that moment I couldn't say no. So it was, yeah, an interesting and emotional experience. And it was really difficult to be face to face. Having it, you know, like, it's, you know, when you see someone homeless on the street, and I do try and speak to people who are homeless on the street. Not always, but, you know, in passing, I will sometimes chat to them. But often you'll just see them as this distant person. They're almost like separate to people, because you're like, oh yeah, that's so sad, but it almost becomes, the emotion attached to it is what they are. You know, you don't necessarily think about them as an individual. You don't think about their wants, their desires, their situation, what led them to this, what their future might entail. You don't really think about these things. You just see them as poor, or you see them as lacking. Like when in a sad situation, you see them as the impact of their situation. So to be having a conversation with this girl who was poor, and she must have only been 5 or 6, to then be out trying to sell flowers to make ends meet, and her mother's doing the same, her younger sister doing the same. I found that really confronting and a really like emotional experience. So yeah, I found it really difficult.
Yeah, thank you for recounting it, because it's good for people to hear, and it if you've not, again, I mentioned this quite a couple of times on the podcast now, if you've not experienced poverty, in person, it is going to silence you for the first couple of days. It's just different, Yeah, okay, we've got some homeless, we've got, quite a big homeless problem in the UK, or if in the US, there's a big homeless problem. But it goes much further than that in these places, because it's not just homeless, it's people just, it's, just hordes of people living on the street, and their entire life and shop is just this, wooden shack, on like the main road, and it's just getting flooded every day. And it's just, and it's in disarray, and they're just making a couple quid, if that. It will silence you, but like anything, if you're around it enough, it numbs you. Which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I think these things are good to experience, just to really realize the reality out there, because I've learned from experiencing things like that just being told about it, or even just seeing it on TV, is never enough. I always thought it was, but having it's happened a couple of times now where I've then been in it and experienced it. It's just a different feeling. It gives you a different perspective on it. So I can totally get that that would have frozen you in that moment. And it might happen again, because we'll be going to many more countries that is going to have that. Because we don't fear from these countries, because they've got beautiful places. The people are lovely. The food's great. You shouldn't fear from going to these places. The people are great. They're so nice, so welcoming, so hospitable, and there's so much great stuff to do. So, depends what type of travel you are, but please don't let it put you off from going somewhere. It really isn't a reason to not go somewhere. Yeah. But maybe we move on to some light-hearted stuff, as we are nearing the end. I'll just hit you with a couple of interesting facts that I heard, and we'll film this on the shorts, because hey, let's create a couple of shorts. So a couple of funny, interesting things that I learnt on my trip to India this last month was, so primarily Hindus are meat eaters. Sorry, start that again. Primarily, Hindus, have a diverse diet. Obviously, don't eat beef, and a lot of the time they will eat. They'll be vegetarian. Most of them will be vegetarian. However, I've learnt that on some days they'll be non-vegetarian, depending what deities they follow. So Hindu is such an interesting religion, because you can have a Hindu to the left of you and the right of you, and they could follow deities in a different way. It's really interesting. It's not as straightforward as like Christianity. It's like people can have deity. The base, you have a deity for each individual day, and that can be very different from that Hindu to that Hindu to that. I found it quite confusing, but I also found it very interesting. So anyway, depending on what deities you pray to each day, on some of the days after 12 o'clock you can eat meat. So there's, even though a good portion of the Hindus are vegetarian, on 2 days of the week. It's usually Tuesdays and Saturdays I've found, but it's not always. It can change. After 12 o'clock, they can eat meat. And it's funny because I was chatting to some locals and they were like, yeah, people literally set alarms to when they can do it because they really want to eat meat. So it's really quite... I just thought it was a bit of a funny little bite. And if I've butchered that, I won't be putting this short out because I feel like I may have butchered that, but that's the... Anyway.
We'll fact check it.
We'll fact check it. Another interesting thing on a different short would be just a funny thing that I learned was for Sikh and Hindu parents, they're not okay with smoking, but they are okay with drinking. And for Muslim parents, they're not okay with smoking. I fucked that up, haven't I?
No, you said it right. And then so Muslims not okay with drinking, I'm guessing.
I've gone and written down the same thing on this sheet. Right. Scrap this entire segment. Scrap it. Because I writ out this segment, and the first thing I'm not sure if it's true, and the second thing I've written it down wrong. So scrap this. Fuck this segment. We're moving forward. Fucking hell. I've proper planned this segment. It's information I have been told, and it's just... I've completely fucked it. I'm sorry, guys.
Well, we can have it next episode.
We'll have it next episode. And I know, locals will just have a go at me because, I'm talking about religion here. I don't want to get religion wrong. But yeah.
Well, shall we revisit that next episode and summarise quickly our favourite and least favourite thing about France?
No, I've got it. I'm gonna save this. Okay, so for something interesting I found out is for Sikh and Hindu parents, they're not okay with smoking, but they are okay with drinking. For Muslim parents, they're okay with smoking, but they're not okay with drinking. And I just thought that was a funny thing because, India's very diverse, but it is, a good portion of it is mainly Muslim, Sikh and Hindu. So I just thought that's quite funny because, I work with people there and there's some are Muslim, some are Hindu, some are Sikh. So it's funny when we go on a night out because, some drink, but some others don't. And the ones that don't drink, they'll smoke. And the ones that don't smoke, they'll drink. So it's just, I just thought it was a kind of funny learning that I sort of observed on a night and then I got told after. So there we go. I saved the segment. But let's go back to what Shelby said and go and summarize the travel segment in 3 minutes.
Okay, so as we've established a new travel segment, maybe not even new anymore. Basically, summarising our favourite and least favourite thing about the last place that we visited and our first impression of the new place. So my favourite thing about Paris, I've not even thought about it, so that's interesting. I'm just going to have to do it on the bounce of what my favourite thing about Paris is. I think my favourite thing about Paris is it's just the general feeling. And I know that's really non-specific, but I've never had a bad time in Paris. Every time I've gone, I've just felt it's a fun city. It's an interesting city. It's really welcoming, really friendly. It feels fresh, like it just... and it felt like coming home. So I think that's probably my favourite thing. After a lot of unfamiliar travel and travelling to places that were totally different culturally and, the food being totally different, the architecture being totally different, being in Paris, really, it felt like coming home. Even though we weren't yet in the UK, it just felt so familiar and so... It reminded me, my heart is European, like I am. As much as I love travelling to other places, and I will always love travelling to other places, that feeling of being European and being in a European city with such rich history and culture, and familiar, I think that was my favourite thing about it. And my least favourite thing... Wait, oh no, sorry, wow. You go.
Jumping the gun there. Yeah, so first note, my mum will be very happy to hear that, because she does not want us to move outside the UK. So when she hears this, and when she even learns about this podcast, because again, we've not told anyone, in our life, but she'll be of the moon and she'll use that as evidence to not leave. So you've just given her a bit of ammunition. Favorite thing was just how relaxing it was. It's just, again, probably what you caught, catching the vibe. It was just chill. It was just, London is like, and it's fun. London's super fun, but it's fast paced. Paris, just as big, it felt just as big, you know, underground, everything, lots of people, but it was just chill. Like, you could just move about, and it was just the vibe, and the people were just relaxed. Like, I just felt at ease there. So yeah, that was it. I want to say the architecture as well. Let me just give that a nod, because the architecture is great. If you're looking for good architecture, Paris is great, but the chill vibes.
Okay, yeah. And also, just to off the back of what you said about people not knowing about the podcast, very quick funny story. We went to see a comedian the other day, Rod Gilbert, Scott, myself, and my brother Michael. And when I was dropping my dog off at my dad's, and I passed him my phone open on Amazon Music, and shout out Amazon Music and Spotify and every other platform you may listen on. And I said to him, "Oh, just have a look at the music, pick something, put whatever on, while I take my dog into my dad's." And I came back, and he said, and he just showed me the music streaming app, and he went, "Well, I couldn't decide whether to continue listening to Shagged, Married, Annoyed, which is the Chris and Rosie Ramsey podcast," he said, "or start listening to Balls Deep. Whatever do you listen to?" I was like, "Oh."
Who was this?
Michael. So he'd seen it on my phone, but he doesn't know what it is. He doesn't know what it is, but he'd seen that I've been listening to
Michael?
Yeah, my bro.
Oh, shit.
Miguel.
No.
So I literally passed him my phone open on music, but it wasn't open on podcast, it was open on music. I said, just, search for whatever, put whatever on. And then he just I listened to Shagged, Married, Annoyed, the Chris and Rosie Ramsey podcast, which is amazing, by the way, very funny. And so he was like, "Well, I didn't know whether to listen to Shagged, Married, Annoyed or Balls Deep." I was like, "Oh."
Oh my God. Imagine if he looks that up to find out what it is.
I know.
So we both had an instant with Balls Deep now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amusing. Did you shared yours with?
No, I didn't. So my instant with Balls Deep was, I was in the office with my team, and I was about to start a meeting with one of my team, and I was on my laptop, and we were both looking at my laptop screen, and I had to go and sign into Google. And of course, Google, when you go to sign into emails, it shows all the accounts you have, and the one that I'd recently been signed into was Balls Deep. So he just looked at the screen, and it just said ballsdeep@gmail.com. I think it's ballsdeeppodcast@gmail.com, just if you want to get into contact with us. But yeah, he just saw that, and I was trying, when something's up, it's just you deal with it so slowly, don't you? You're like, "Ugh," and I'm like trying to do it, and he's just staring. He didn't say anything, but I was like, for sure he's just seen that I have a Gmail that says Balls Deep on, and he didn't mention it. He didn't give me any weird looks, but usually I'd mention what that was, but again, we're not telling anyone about this podcast for a while because we want to get comfortable with it. So he now he reports to me, and he knows that I have an email that has Balls Deep. So what he thinks that is, I don't know. And he may have already spoken to other team members about it. I hope not. That's not really good for a manager, is it? No. Jesus.
And I've had another experience like that where I had a folder called Balls Deep on my desktop, and I shared my screen in a meeting, and it took me longer than it should have to realise that they were looking at my desktop, and there was a folder just in the corner saying Balls Deep, which I think is like almost worse because there was no context other than a folder called Balls Deep. So anyway, it's fine. It is what it is. We're all adults. So on to my least favourite thing about France. That's or Paris specifically, I guess. That's a tough one. Because I loved all of it. I think maybe the expensive taxis compared to other places. I don't know, that's maybe a cop-out because they were reasonable, if I'm being honest, like compared to UK taxis, they weren't bad. But I suppose that would be my least favourite thing, is the the places that we were going, it kind of became necessary to get taxis because it would have meant a bus and a train or 2 trains or whatever, and it was a little bit spenny. So that was my least favourite thing about Paris. What was yours, Scott?
Everything was in French. I know you're gonna think I'm the most ignorant prick, but everything was in French, and for some reason I was convinced that more things would be in English. I've travelled to nearly 30 countries now. I'm not an idiot, but for some reason I thought there'll be way more stuff in English here. We're right next door. Everything was in French. Everything. I couldn't even figure out what the prices of the potatoes were, because there was like 3 types of potatoes, but there was like 6 different prices above it, because when you're in the vegetable aisle, you know, all the pricing of the vegetables is not directly with it, it's all above in like this big like banner, and I didn't know what the word for potato was, and even when I did finally figure it out, I didn't know which potato it was, and it was a nightmare. And then I went to the peppers, and I couldn't figure out whether, you know, the price there for the 2 different peppers, which one was for the trio, which one was for the singles, and I had a nightmare I think we were in that supermarket for an hour to get like a week's worth of shopping. And also I've learnt French in school, so I thought it'd be easier. So anyway, it's because everything's in French, and it's not because I'm ignorant. I love the French, but I don't know. I'll leave it there.
Okay. Good least favourite thing. So in terms of being back in the UK, I guess we can't really do first impressions of being in the UK, so I'll just briefly say my first experience of being back. And that is that I found it a little bit overwhelming, I think, because we've gone from it being just us 2 and us doing everything at our pace, which is invariably slow, you know, like just chilled and relaxed, to then, you know, reconnecting, which of course it was so nice to reconnect with family and friends and everything. But it was just a little bit overwhelming, especially like because everyone wants to know everything, and it's just like, yeah, overwhelming, I think is how I'd describe it. Like having to say, oh yeah, this country was best because this, or that was my favourite thing because that, or, you know, like typical things that you would talk about after being on holiday, for example. But we've got 5 months worth to relay, and I've just found that a little bit overwhelming. So that would be, and getting my life in order, and, you know, I mean, Scott's just tidied my bedroom for me today because he's a legend. So yeah, that's my bet on that. What's yours, Scott?
Yeah, I think I personally quite enjoy talking about the travels, if, you know, if people have questions. But I think I am something with you in, I found it also, I kind of don't want to say overwhelming, because like India was overwhelming, but it's kind of like I felt lost for the first 2 weeks. Like I felt like I just couldn't. I think because we've been going at such a fast pace, and we've been having, you know, especially when you've got to do things, you know, in traveling, you know, I only have this accommodation to the end of the week. I don't have any food in right now. We've already booked this thing. We need to be at it. Oh, we're here a week. We need to do something. We need to go out. Oh, I have these 3 meetings. I've got to fit it in within this day. But we know some guy's going to come in and fix something in the room because the fan's not working. You know, there's just so many more. You know, you're dealing with a lot. And because you have to do them, otherwise, you know, you won't have accommodation, or you won't have food. And obviously there's so much more involved in that. At home, you just know where the food is, so you just go get it straight away. You have to now figure out, where do I buy the food? Does the supermarket have the food I want? You know, are the things broken in the Airbnb? Who's going to fix that? I have to, you know, it can be a right palaver just to do simple things. I think because we were so constantly making decisions, so fast paced doing things, when everything slowed down, I think it just confused my wires, and I found it quite hard to get back into the sort of groove of work and groove of just life. Like I was finding myself being very demotivated in the morning, very tired all the time. And it was, I've really struggled to just kick myself into gear again. But I must say, the last couple of days I felt much better. My exercise is more consistent. I'm feeling less foggy in the brain. So I think it was just that 2-week blues, which I did say to you. For me, when I come back off travel, it usually takes me up to 2 weeks to just reset myself, and it's been the 2-week mark now, and I do feel much better.
That's interesting, because we've kind of said the total opposite of each other of one of those points, because for me, coming back felt more fast paced. Even though like everything you've said makes sense to me logically, yes, that was faster paced, like all the change in the locations and stuff. But I think in terms of socializing, that's the thing that's like gone up a gear. When we've gone from it just being us two. So like, I said that I felt like traveling was more chilled because it was just us two, and then coming back has felt like there's a lot more. I think it's like, just socially, it feels like more, even though actually it is less, like you've said, like it's almost slowing things down because we're not moving about as much. So it's a weird paradox, basically, I think is what I'm getting at.
I guess it depends on what exhausts us as well. I'm quite a chatterbox, so I can socialise.
Yeah, and I can be quite introverted, so.
But then again, at the same time, I'll never start a conversation with someone, but you will. So it's a lot of
swings and roundabouts.
Yeah, it's a lot of swings and roundabouts. And also you have kept pedal to the metal since we've been back, whereas I'm on my computer all day, so I can at least, I can get a good sleep. I can, take it easy through the day, do my work. Whereas you've been not just working, you've been, working all the weekends, and you've been on your feet a lot, and you've been doing gigs. Yeah. You've been.
Yeah, it's like my evenings and weekends have been busy as well as my days, so it's.
Yeah, I feel like you haven't taken the foot off the pedal, whereas I've been able to take my foot off the pedal. Last weekend was pretty busy, but this weekend I've done I've worked, but I've taken it way more chill. Like this weekend, I've really slowed it down, whereas you've just worked all weekend. Yeah. So I feel much better this weekend. So
Good. Yeah. So do you have any other points that you want to add, my darling, before we wrap this up? Since we're 12 minutes over.
No. Yeah. As always, we've gone over, but we are going to get better at that because, we don't have a fan base yet, and people aren't going to listen to us for an hour and 12 minutes, but one day they will.
Well, if they're hearing this, then they already are, so thank you for listening. We'd like to thank you for taking a break from your day to get balls deep with us. Until next time, remember,
stay ballsy,
dive deep,
but don't forget your snorkel.
Balls deep!